I love that song. Welcome everybody to our monthly Zoom meeting, and just for a little the technology side of it, for the best view of our slides, click on the view options at the top of your screen, and then click on the side-by-side mode, and that will give you the best visual presentation for this meeting. What we're going to be covering today is starting with the agenda. Greg Grebe will give us the joke of the day. I will talk to you about the latest happenings within our branch. John Knoll is on a lobster safari in Maine, so Mike Thalen will be taking over for him today. And then Joe Reed will be talking about our speaker. The speaker will be Paul Stich, who's going to talk about cybersecurity. And then after that presentation, Joe will be doing a Q&A. Now, there is a button at the bottom of your screen for asking questions. And if you have any question whatsoever, push on that button and they'll come to us and we'll try to get your question in. We're going to end with Mike Thalen singing America the Beautiful. And he was going to sing it to the tune of Johnny Be Good, but we won't let him. Mike, sorry, but you're not going to do that. Then I'll have a special drawing. 25 of the participants, 3 of our participants will get $25 check. And then we'll close the meeting, which will probably be in about an hour and 10 minutes. I want to welcome some new folks that we have. We have Bill Chen in Dublin, who likes biking, photography, golf, hiking, travel, and yoga. Wow, that guy's all over the place, isn't he? John Conroy in Pleasanton likes golf, fishing, bocce ball, also photography, hiking, and travel. And Sam Dimmel in Danville, golf, sailing, dancing, pole dancing? No, that's wrong. Hiking, biking, and traveling. So welcome aboard, guys. Glad to have you with us. This is my favorite slide, as you well know. And these are our former Big Sirs, and they demand our respect and courtesies. But I also like telling you a little bit about them that you don't know. And all these guys came from the same orphanage in Fresno, who by chance ended up in San Ramon at the same time. And that's amazing. I don't know how they did it, but those are our past former Big Sirs. Okay, our speaker is going to be Paul Stich. And you can talk to us about cybersecurity, what we need to know. All right, let's go to Greg. Greg is going to tell us a couple of stories. And fresh back from completing his missionary work in Las Vegas. It's all yours, Greg. Go, buddy.
I thought you were going to say you're going to have a raffle for 25 guys for $3. But
that's a good. We'll put that in, Greg.
Yeah, put that in a suggestion box. Anyway, the first story, is a little bit of a parallel to the governments around the world work. Anyway, so this Indian chief passes away. And the Indian that takes over as chief, he doesn't really know how to read all the signs and everything. So, but the tribe comes to him, it's in the fall, and they ask him if it's going to be a cold winter, and he says, yeah, it's going to be a cold winter. Get a lot of firewood. So, they start collecting firewood, and the chief, he wasn't sure, so he calls the National Weather Bureau, and he says, is it going to be a cold winter? And they say, yeah, it's going to be a cold winter. So he tells the tribe, collect more firewood. And then, just to be sure, he calls the Weather Bureau and he says, is it going to be a cold winter? And he says, yeah, it's going to be a very cold winter. So he tells the tribe, collect some more firewood. So then the third time he calls the Weather Bureau and he says, is this, are you sure it's going to be a cold winter? He says, very, very cold winter. He says, well, because the Indians are collecting a shitload of firewood. That's the way things work, isn't it? Anyway, so the next little story is a little Johnny story, but little Johnny sits behind Carol in religion class, And the teacher says, who created the world? And Carol's kind of halfway fallen asleep. And Johnny jabs her in the butt with his #2 pencil, and she yells, "God Almighty!" And the teacher says, "Well, that's right, Carol. Good job." So she, a little later in the class, says, "Who's our Lord and Savior?" And Carol's kind of halfway nodding off again, and Johnny jabs her with the pencil, and she says, "Jesus Christ!" And she says, "Good job, Carol." A little later on in the class is Carol's kind of nodding off again, says, "Carol, what did Eve tell Adam after their third child?" Of course, Johnny hits her with the pencil again. She goes, "You stick me with that again and I'll break it in half."
Thanks, Greg, and good job. What's going on the branch? Well, we're starting to get things open. The SIR picnic is scheduled for Wednesday, August 4th at San Ramon Central Park from 3:30 to 7:30. We will provide the food. We'll have some water there, but you bring your own beverage. And if a wine bottle happens to fall out of your picnic kit and it's nice and discreet, well, so be it. This is filling up fast, so if you haven't registered, please do so on the website under social, then click on events registration, and you can register from there. Our return to the bridges is scheduled for Wednesday, September 15th. And we don't have any details now from the bridges relative to how many people that they have. Normally, we've been having over 200, and we don't know what their capacities are going to be. So as soon as we find out, we will notify you. But mark September 15th on your calendar, because we will be rejoining or starting up that the bridges meeting on that date. Okay, this is, as I mentioned last month, this is a new protocol from State SIR, and it's full COVID-19 vaccinations, and the signing of the SIR COVID waiver, which is shown on the right of the slide there, is required to attend any branch event, both indoors and outdoors, by both members and guests, including the spouses. And this is a one-time action. And it's mandated by State SIR for insurance purpose for us to remain active in our branch. Unfortunately, there are no exceptions, and this waiver form can be found on the website by clicking on the COVID waiver form on the homepage. And that's it right there, and the instructions of what to do with it are on the bottom of the form. Okay. These statewide SIR protocols are for the safety and health of all our members as it relates to the spreading of COVID-19. And as we've emphasized from the very beginning of this COVID thing, that as a branch, we are 100% committed to provide for a safe environment for our members and spouses. And that includes all our activities, our events, and our meetings. On a good note, no dues until January 22nd. And we've got a little money reserved in our treasury, and we're going to finance the program until the end of the year. So you'll hear more about the dues being due, later on in the year. And one thing I want to mention before we move on to the drawing is I put a note out a while ago about saving a date for our Jim Powers golf tournament. And for those that didn't know Jim, he was a longtime member of SIR and passed away a while ago, and an avid golfer. So that tournament has been pushed back to August 23rd at Rossmore Golf Course. And you'll be getting something in the mail or in the email about that. But moved from July 5th to August 23rd. Okay, as is our tradition, we're going to pick out 3 names from the Zoom participation list, and each lucky sir will get a $25 check. And then per Greg's recommendation, next month we'll do 25 names for a $3 check. We'll see how that flies. All right, Mike Thalen, one of our board of directors, is going to talk to us about awards, birthdays, speakers, and events. Go, Mike.
Thanks. I hope you can hear me. I know John Knowles on vacation having some lobster fun, so I get a chance to do the awards to begin with. The first award is one we did started years ago, but it's for somebody we actually call the award above and beyond. It's for a person that's setting a standard difficult to match, doing more than one would normally do, and better than required. That's a tall order, but the recipient this year is, and well-deserving, is Michael Lee, as the certificate shows.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
You bet, Michael. You've done a great job. A
Thank
couple
you.
of things without going into a lot of detail about what he's done. There's a couple of things that's important. One, for his volunteer volunteer work for recording all the activities. And when you have 30 plus activities, that's a tall order. And Michael stepped up to the plate and has been, as you will see in a few minutes, when he does his report, he stepped up the plate and has done a magnificent job, and we appreciate that.
Thanks, Mike.
The second thing is that he's also started his senior fitness group activity. So if you haven't gone to do that, you should look into that. I think he'll talk about it probably later, but we should definitely do that. I mean, that's really helpful. And those kind of things are making why he's deserving of this above and beyond award.
Thank you. I'm honored.
Thank you, Michael. Next slide is our longevity awards. Congratulations to the 5-year members, Howard Kushner, my friend John Knoll, Earl Shrimp, and Paul Vanella. Congratulations on your years here. The next awards are 10 and 15-year members. Robert Caviglia for 10 years, Bob Basil for 15, and Del Boscacci, I think I said that right, Del, I hope, for 15 years. Congratulations on being part of SIRS for 15 and 10 years. And now the birthdays. Happy birthday, there's 20 of us.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear sirs. Happy birthday to you. From good friends and true, from old friend and new. May good luck go with you and happiness too. How old are you now?
Happy birthday!
Did you all know there's more than one verse to happy birthday? I just found that out from Dan last week. So anyway, we also have speaker schedule. We have Paul Stich, of course, today, but we also have our July speaker, Jeffrey Woglum, Federal Debt and Deficit, and then our August speaker, Bruce Daggy, Tri-Valley Air Pollution. And I want to thank the speaker team that keeps bringing up some great speakers every month. So keep up the good work. All right, this is our first get together. It's come next month, Branch 128 Back Barbecue. August 4th, there's only 40 tickets left. So that means there's at least 180 people already registered to come to Central Park and San Ramon on August 4th. If you go on our website, you can see how to register, but there's only 40 tickets left and we would love to see all of you there. Should be a great outing. Now, the not so good news, although it can be eventually, and that is our Ladies' Day luncheon has been postponed for this year. We are planning to reschedule next April, we hope, of 2022. That coincides with where we usually have our LDL, and that's usually in April. But for a lot of different reasons, we had to postpone it until then. look on the website as often as you can to get more information, and we'll certainly update you at different meetings. The holiday dance, however, dinner dance at Diablo Country Club is in early December and may still be possible. Details will be published when arrangements can be confirmed. So we're still working hard on trying to see if that can happen. Future special events. We have a tremendous events coordinating team that puts together all kinds of events. Been kind of on a hiatus for obvious reasons, but they're hard at work as usual, trying to put together some more events. The things that they're planning to do for now and for the rest of the year is a Giants game. We don't have all the specifics on these yet, but they're working on them. Oakland Zoo, Alcatraz, San Francisco Walk Tour, Anchor Brewing Tasting Room, which is what I'm looking forward to. And so if you want more information, you can visit our website, RSVP section under small groups for the current outings. But as we get more bigger events together, you'll be under the event registration social tag on our website. And we look forward to all these events. And again, thank you to the events committee. They're doing a terrific job.
Thank you, Mike.
You bet.
So let's talk about the activity group and let's find out what's going on because things are definitely changing. So activities on hold include bowling, bridge, cooking. Dine-In has 4 couples talking about restarting dinners together in July. On hold again is the Friday monthly breakfast, Metropolitan Opera, movies, STEM is taking a break, and travel is still on hold. Activities streaming virtually on Zoom include fantasy football with Dan Pullen. That'll be reactivated in late June, so contact Dan if you're interested in participating. They're going to have a beginners league for those who are curious about how it works. Investing will meet on June 23rd to explore what a reopening of the economy means and what impacts should be expected on investing. My senior fitness class meets to continually go over physical fitness. We meet virtually on the first and third Mondays of the month at 9 a.m. The Wine Fellowship continues to share wines from all over the world on Zoom. Activities meeting in person, but socially distancing are Bocce, which has 26 players on Mondays at 9:15 a.m. at Sycamore Park in Danville. The AM Book Club is meeting at Oak Hill Park and will discuss Master and Commander on July 12th about the friendship between a ship's surgeon and an intelligence agent. The Evening Book Club will discuss The Mountains Sing about a North Vietnamese family before, during, and after the Vietnam War. Book Club 3 will review John Grisham's A Time for Mercy on June 23rd. Cycling has been on 4 rides this month. On June 28th, they will be doing the River Ride along the American River towards Folsom Dam and back. Dine Out held its first event in May, and the second event will be indoors at Oasis Grill in Pleasanton on June 24th. Fishing has begun in-person meetings at the Legends Bar and Grill at the Diablo Creek Golf Course in Concord. Couples golf will be playing at the 9-hole course at Las Positas tomorrow at 10 a.m. Lunch follows at Beeb's Restaurant at the golf course. 9-hole golf has 3 starting times on Tuesdays and Fridays and are also starting to play travel courses occasionally on Fridays. Tuesday 18-hole golf has had almost 120 rounds played over the past 4 weeks at Bridges, Chardonnay, Dublin Ranch, and Poppy Ridge. Thursday golf is going strong with 4 tee times every Tuesday morning at local East Bay courses. Hiking will go out on June 25th at Chabot Regional Park. Pickleball has more places to play and are waiting for indoor courts to open. Poker Group 1 has to resume play on the first Monday of the month, and they're enjoying the camaraderie. Poker Group 2 is also actively playing once a month, and they're still looking for a few good men. Tennis has a group of about 16 players that start on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 7 a.m. at Central Park in San Ramon. For more information about any activity, sign on to the activities page of our website at sir128.com. Now here's Joe Reed to introduce our speaker. Joe?
Great, Mike. Can you, I take it all you can hear me?
You're good, Joe.
Great. Hey, it's my pleasure to introduce Paul Stich, who is a longtime friend, a technology innovator, an entrepreneur, and a business school professor. Paul's innovative mindset has led him to launching 3 very successful cybersecurity technology companies. Paul currently teaches entrepreneurship in the MBA program at St. Mary's College in Moraga, and he's both an investor and an advisor to several early-stage startup tech companies. Paul is a Bay Area resident. He grew up in Hayward, received his bachelor's degree from St. Mary's, and then got his MBA from the University of Notre Dame in South Bend. Paul has been the CEO of 3 internet security companies, which he built from scratch. One, Counterpane, which was a computer network security program, was acquired by British Telecom in 2006. Dacient, hopefully I got that correct, is a cloud computing cybersecurity application, which was acquired by Twitter in 2012. And the third internet security company that Paul built was AppThority, which was cybersecurity for mobile devices like telephones, which was acquired by Symantec in 2018. Paul has served on many public and private boards and is a current member of St. Mary's College Board of Regent. He also serves on the board of directors for Ronnie Lott's All-Star Helping Kids, where he mentors several amazing social entrepreneurs as they focus on disrupting the cycle of poverty in the Bay Area. Paul lives in Alamo with his family currently, and it is my great pleasure to welcome Paul to speak with the sirs today on a very important issue, cybersecurity. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Joe. You've never said such nice things about me before.
Paul, I can do more if you want. I've got a second page.
It's a pleasure to be with you today. And, you know, I have been teaching at St. Mary's for the last 8 years. And so when I talk to students, most of the companies that I started with, nobody's heard of. Companies like, you know, Pacific Telephone, where I started my career, I get a puzzled blank. So it's nice to be able to talk about some of the companies that I used to work with, and you've all witnessed the internet evolve just like I have. You know, it was very fortunate to be in the Bay Area with the tech that was an innovation that came through here. And so, you know, I'm just going to give you a brief run on some of the things that I worked with, and then we'll talk about some of the trends in cybersecurity. And I hope to make this as interactive as possible, answer any questions that you have. So first of all, I just want to go on the record. I'm not a cybersecurity expert by any means. I've been the CEO of several cybersecurity companies, and I've been really lucky to work with 2 of the most highly regarded cybersecurity experts in the world. One, Bruce Schneier, who was the founder of Counterpane and is now at Harvard and also a fellow at the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Security. And the second, Neil Daswani, who was the founder of Dacient and is now the director at Stanford for advanced cybersecurity. I was very lucky to come in, you know, I was brought in by the venture capitalists to be the CEO with these 2 co-founders. So they are the brains behind the companies that were there. And I'll share some stories that I had with them. But like I said, I had started my career at Pacific Telephone in the late 70s, was part of the AT&T monopoly, then watched it get blown up with divestiture, and then watched Pacific Telephone become Pacific Bell, Southwestern Bell, SBC, and now back to AT&T, which is really SBC. And, at the time, the internet was not taken seriously as a secure, reliable network. And, there's a lot of truth in that it was not built for security. It was not, nobody could envision what would happen, and where the internet was going to go. And that's one of the problems, is the complexity. If they could start all over and patch a lot of the holes and make it much more secure than it was designed for. So I spent the first 20 years with large company. I was a management consultant with KPMG, and then was one of the founders of the IBM consulting group under Lou Gerstner's in the 90s, and all focused around communications, telephone companies. And then for some strange reason, I started a company in 1999. There was a lot going on. I started an internet consulting company called Groundswell right here in Alamo. There were 3 of us. And within 10 months, we had raised $50 million, had 240 employees with offices in New York, San Francisco, LA, and then the tech bubble burst. So I got firsthand scars from what it was like for insane growth and then for insane downsizing. I mean, it was really hard to get 240 employees, recruiting them, but it was really painful to go from 240 to 80 as the bubble burst and impact those families. We ended up merging that company with another company. And then I was approached by a venture capitalist at Excel, great VC, and they were looking for somebody to help scale this security company called Counterpaint. And again, amazing founder. And so I went in there and we were doing less than $2 million of business, built up the sales team. And what we did is really protected the perimeter of a company. And we would monitor for attackers. Some of the clients that we had were the Royal Bank of Canada, public facing whitehouse.gov. And at the time, a lot of, the maliciousness was defacing of websites, and so it wasn't the threat that what we see now. And when we were acquired by British Telecom really wanted to put security into the network, and they wanted to have a reputation for a secure network and with security. So security was, a kind of a marketing tool to differentiate the different networks at the time. And so I ended up working for British Telecom for a couple of years, have always lived in the Bay Area. I traveled. In fact, I probably haven't lived more than 20 miles from where I was born in Oakland. And, great exit, enjoyed working for BT, went, presented to the House of Lords on security. And, I watched Bruce Schneier interact with his world. Often accompanied him to Black Hat, which at the beginning were a lot of hackers that would go there, and really the Black Hat conference over the years has really become legitimate as the security market has grown. So I started with perimeter, and then Dacient had this brilliant founder, Neil Daswani, who came out of Google, and there was one big attack that Google had called Aurora, and Neil was selected to lead that team, and he ended up winning a President's Award from Google, which was a seven-figure $1 million award given to one of the most innovative employees. And so that inspired Neil to go out and start his own company. And what we did is identified malware on the web. Malware is malicious software, looks safe, but can do damage to the network and to the people that use it. And what was really unique about that is that we didn't even need permission to monitor the web. So we could go, and we did go to the New York Times website and saw that their ads had malicious software in the ads. We would call their chief technology officer and their CISO and say, you've got this malware on your web, we're just letting you know. And they actually accused us of putting it there. It's a great marketing tool is what they said. But Neil was brilliant, and we ended up getting clients like Bank of America, Microsoft, Yahoo, Amazon, and one was Twitter. And that was only about an 18-month run. And what happened that Twitter came to us and said, what you do is critical to the monetization of our business. And so we would like to acquire you. And it was, relatively early, but it was life-changing for the founders and was very successful exit. They didn't need a CEO. So I ended up going to New Zealand fly fishing for a few months, and they did an amazing job. And so I'm very grateful to be able to work with partners like Neil and Bruce. And so the last company was a mobile security company. And I thought, what could be more personal, than your phone? And there's so much trust that people have with Apple and Google with the physical nature of the phone that the market wasn't there. And your phone leaks so much data, and it's a trail. It's a surveil. It knows exactly where you've been. It knows where you're going with your calendar, who your contacts are. And I was surprised that people didn't take their phone security. There's a lot of trust in the manufacturers and in the apps, and most of the apps that are free are collecting information about you. And so, we ended up selling it to
Symantec.
I know, Symantec, and it was a nice exit, but it's just been the evolution of security over the last 10 years has been dominated by organized crime. And, that's when we talk about what's going on with ransomware, and we'll talk more about those specific attacks in a bit. But it's really organized crime making hundreds of millions of dollars. And a lot of it comes out of Russia, where they're protected. To break into a company's network, you're doing it from, tens of thousands of miles away and with borders in between. So it's a safe way for organized crime. They don't have to worry about, drug dealers and the FBI breaking into their doors. And they have relationships with the government in Russia and China. And that is a lot to do with what's going on with, if you look at what's in the news the last couple of weeks, that's what, we see, whether it's JBS Foods, Colonial Pipeline, the NBA, there's tens of thousands of companies that have been hit by ransomware and will continue. I actually believe that the dark side got more press than they wanted with those, because they're in it for the money. They're not in it to raise gas prices. They're not in it, to have a run on meats with JBS. But it's also a reminder as to how serious the threat is. And I can go back to the mid 2000s, where we thought that the power grids would be the targets, that if people really wanted to shut down Wall Street, that, the Northeast power grid, including New York City, would have been the primary targets. And that's never happened yet. And it could have happened. And I'm not saying it won't ever happen, but they, the main people there wanted, it's all about the money. It's not what they can do. And so, John, I'm going to take a few minutes to just talk about kind of the evolution of cybersecurity And it really started in the mid to late 80s. We read about bored teenagers working out of their parents' basements, small teams, developed worms and viruses. And what they really were doing was defacing websites. They were playing, but not doing big damage. In the mid 2000s, like I said, organized crimes got involved and, really become how to steal money, conduct fraud. And that's where we saw phishing, where people would try to get passwords from people within an organization. Most of the threats that come into an organization or through identity theft and phishing, where they're able to get passwords into an organization. And once they're within the network, then they can start crawling around, finding the data that's most important, and then setting positions for future moves. And then probably in 2010, 2012, we saw nation states get involved and intellectual property was being stolen. And that's when there were, threats around nuclear arms development, political elections, long-term types of, it wasn't around just the perimeter, but how could you trust within a networks? And then there became an advanced persistent threats, APTs, where attackers become mission-based and, as opposed to attacks of opportunity. And these threats go on for years and years. And oftentimes companies don't realize that they've been breached. And, and so why is it that some companies, are breached and others are not? And
Hey, Paul, could you take a step back? What is an APT?
An advanced persistent threat. Okay. And so that's where an attacker will select an organization or a government agency, and they've infiltrated the network, but they're collecting information. And so they're persistently there, and they don't want to be identified yet. And so they're collecting as much data as possible. And it's some building up into a point where they want, whether it's a ransomware or whether it's impacting an election, whether it's making, and I'll go through some of these threats. If you go back to the Office of Personnel Management, which is like 2014 and 15, the Chinese government broke into one of the most sensitive organizations, where our security team was housed. And it was an organization that didn't have very good security guidelines, investments. And they were warned for over 10 years that they lacked adequate security to protect its sensitive data. And what they found is, they were spending less than the SBA on security. And so all their personnel files got acquired by the Chinese government, and that organization no longer exists and is now under the Department of Defense. But it was a constant threat where they were going in, trying to, get the records, and really compromised the security of our country. Joe,
Hey,
any
Paul,
other?
yeah,
I'm
quick question.
Sure.
What do you think the main drivers are? Do you think that these individuals are looking to monetize the threat through requesting a ransom so that a large company could could continue to operate their computer system, or are they really looking for personal information that might allow them to access bank accounts or stock market accounts? Or is it still a matter of disruption where they can basically say, you know what, you shouldn't be very secure. We have access to your information. So what do you think the drivers are? Do you think they're looking to monetize through a ransom so that they'll leave your system alone? Or do they really want data, including intellectual property, that they can sell to somebody else? What do you think their primary goals are?
It's money. They're driven by money. And, they've legal economy in Russia is not very good. I mean, it's hard for a talented tech person to make a living, but through organized crime and they've got huge R&D efforts going on. They've got verticals. They know which companies are not making the investments in their security that they should. So they look for easy targets. And, they know, there was a small company or a nonprofit in San Francisco that had $600,000 taken within the last couple of weeks. And it was through a phone call that say, why they were supposed to wire this money to one bank. And, it was very unsophisticated, but they were able to convince the CFO of this nonprofit that they didn't have, that they were going through an audit, and so their normal wiring procedures weren't there. And then so this $600,000 got wired to a bank in Texas, and then from there it was to go to another foreign country, to have 3 or 4 banks along the way. And what's very difficult is, where did the crime happen? And so when the nonprofit contacted the police and the FBI, they were saying, well, it didn't happen in San Francisco, it happened in Texas. And so getting, assistance from law enforcement is very difficult around cyber securities. But to answer your question, it's driven by money. But the Chinese government, the North Koreans, the Iranians, and Russian government are all looking for intellectual property, and so they're kind of sponsoring a lot of these attackers as they come through.
What steps can American industry take to ensure that we stem some of these attacks on our very valuable data?
Sure. Well, I mean, the real thing, you can tell if a company, in the first meeting, how serious do they take security? What's their level of investment? Where does their chief security officer report to? Does it report directly to the CEO? Is it, to report to the audit committee? And some of that is just lack of investment, the ROI. It's funny how companies can make the investments in security after the fact, once they've been hacked, but beforehand, they're very lackadaisical. And this is really just in the last few years it has become a board issue. But the simple things, if you look at like the technical roots, do they encrypt their data? Is that something, data should be encrypted while it's at rest and in motion as you're moving it. And encryption is just a way of, mathematically encoded data so that anyone who doesn't have the encryption key can't decode the data. And what's happening with ransomware is that the criminals will come in and they're encrypting the data so that the company loses access to it. And so once they don't have access, they can't run their business, and they need to make a decision. Do they want to pay the ransomware, or do they, can they restore their data? Do they have ways of working around it? And most companies end up paying the ransomware. And for the most part, the people with the ransomware are trustworthy. I mean, that they've restored their data. Because if they found out that, they pay the ransomware and then the data still doesn't get restored, that, word will spread quickly. And, there've been cases of that, but, they want to be responsible to their customers, the ransomware, as crazy as that sounds.
Okay, Paul, we're starting to get questions from the audience, and I encourage everyone, use the chat feature. I'm monitoring that, and I'll get the questions out. Here's the first question we received, and I'll modify it just a little bit. Paul, what do you think the U.S. response should be to cyber criminals? If you were the head of the law enforcement effort to confront these cyber criminals, what can the U.S. do to discourage or damage these groups so that it doesn't become a more prevalent problem?
Well, it is a prevalent problem, and that's one of the problems. There's very little they can do. Right now, I guess Biden and Putin are discussing the issue right now, and I doubt that Putin will, he'll nod his head and say, yeah, I agree with this, but there's too much money coming into Russia, and he has all of the strength of the cyber attackers to influence nations and things. So I don't see a way that the penalties are just not significant enough, and it's very little risk that they'll be captured.
Does it have to be at the federal level, or can we do a better job of educating local law enforcement and other groups?
These attacks are coming through the internet from overseas, so they have no jurisdiction. What can you do is strengthen security. What companies want to make it as difficult as possible to break in, but still be able to to make money. I mean, and also to have access to the internet. I mean, if you look at some of the major breaches that have happened, I would bet that everyone on this call has been impacted by one of these breaches. In 2017, Equifax had over 145 million records that were stolen by 4 Chinese hackers. And the main cause was software vulnerabilities, that Equifax was not keeping current with patching their networks. And then the Marriott breach of 2018, there were 383 million records, 5 million passport numbers were stolen. And this was in the middle when Marriott had very good security, but they had just acquired Starwood. And Starwood had been breached before. And during the due diligence, this wasn't identified. And so once Starwood was acquired, they had access into the network, and the Starwood Marriott breach was huge.
Okay. Here's another question for you,
Sure.
Paul. Can you recommend a PC product that encrypts data that you believe in?
Well, they're built in on Apple, and again, what's the debate? Do you want to encrypt all your photos and things like that? But the pieces that I would recommend to as a consumer is any opportunity that you have to use 2-factor authentication, take advantage of that. Whether it's for your email, for a bank, anywhere, just and if you don't know what 2-factor authentication is, that like when you log on to your email, they will send a code to mostly it's your phone with a numeric code, and then you'll enter that code. So, they're verifying it with a separate device that you are who you say you are. And then another item that I would do is a password manager. Does anybody, if you raise your hand if you use a password manager? Does anybody know what a password manager is?
Well, Paul, I'll be the guinea pig. No, I don't. So help me out here. I guess I shouldn't be keeping all my passwords in one email. on my server without double verification. So
Yeah, with
I'm
your,
guilty.
your kid's name, with his year that he was born, and all those types of
Wow, I've been hacked.
that we use. But there, I'm aware of three. One is one password, numeric one, PASSWORD. Another is Dashlane and LastPass. But a password manager is a way that it resides on your computer. It encrypts all of your passwords, and it suggests passwords, which are longer, cryptic passwords that are more difficult to hack. And
Paul, I have Dashlane, and I have it because my son's in internet security. He came over here and set the whole thing up. Like, what are you doing? He said, yeah, you need this. So, but I would never know about anything like that.
right. And so I guess if you started Googling, how to make my PC safer, how to make my laptop safer, when you bought your computer, do you use McAfee or Norton on those types of things, and then keeping them up to date. One other area that is really simple is the router at your house. That's how the internet comes to your house, is how an attacker would come in. Is your router, do you have a secure password on it? And, does it have a name, like somebody, driving down the street could see, Joe Reed's internet or something like that. And
Okay, I'm going to change that also right after I get off this call.
It's just how, simple and obvious those things are. And, most people say, well, why would anybody want to, get me? Why would they come after me? And, they got to go after somebody. And so they go for the easiest attack zones, and what could they get? We still get people calling on the phone saying that, I'm your nephew, and, I need $2,000 in money cards. And my dad, every time I talk to him, I tell him not to answer the phone, not to do these things. And one day, this was several years ago, it was probably about 86 at the time. He was convinced that, one of his nephews from the Midwest had been in an accident and had gone to the store with to wire some money. And both stores told him, look, this is, you're being hacked right here. This is wrong. This is, don't do it. And he went home, and he was still afraid to tell me about it, and he didn't. So, they prey on susceptible people. And unfortunately, older people are targets, and it just drives me nuts. And they're so trusting, and, they still answer their phone. But
Hey, Paul, we got another question. Can you explain to us, layman, how the FBI was able, in the Colonial Pipeline incident, how they were able after the fact to track down the Bitcoin and recover some of the ransom paid?
yeah, that actually, two great things happened last week that was encouraging, and that was one of them. One of it was they traced it to the timing, because everything through Bitcoin is a recorded transaction. It's secure. You can't see it, but everybody could see it. And so they were able to track at the time that it happened, where it did, and then find subsequent transactions after that. Now, I have no idea how they were able to get the keys to do that. I would guess it would have been some kind of an inside job that was there. And again, I would think that they're trying to go underground and go undercover and work their way through that. And because there was, and so the bottom line is, I'm not sure exactly, but I would guess that because of the quickness that they were able to do it, they were undercover, and they were they were very close to the Bitcoin transactions, and they had their expertise to do that also.
Paul, what do you think of the program WebRoot? Are you familiar with it?
I'm aware of it, and there are lots of them that are out there. There are 5,000 cybersecurity companies that have, developed products. And one of the frustrations that chief security officers have is an integrated suite of products. And so they would look to the McAfees and the Symantec's of the world to integrate those, but they have never been able to do that. And so you have these, really strong point solutions that do one thing, but they don't do enough. And so that's why Symantec and McAfee have bought so many of the tools. And so, WebRoot is one tool, and I'm not, I haven't been in cybersecurity the last 3 years, so I'm not sure exactly what they're doing. FireEye is a local company that really was developed for APTs, advanced persistent threats. You see a lot of them being quoted. Recently, Dave DeWalt was the CEO. He's retired, but does a Danville resident, does a lot in cybersecurity with investments. And so, the other piece is, and I wanted to talk about this, is there's so many job opportunities in cybersecurity that there aren't enough people to fill those. I tell my kids, their friends, if they want lifetime employment, work in cybersecurity. And some of it is technical, and other things, from auditing and forensic work and things in that nature.
So here, another question is really, is it really more about commercial organizations that have data at risk, or given that we do a lot of online banking, we do online shopping using debit and credit cards, is our personal data every bit at risk as a big company's data for these type of hacking scams?
But, banks have gotten very smart. 10 years ago, if you said that somebody was using your credit card unauthorized, they would doubt you. But now it's so prevalent that they know that's the case. And so you will find out, usually before you're aware of it, that the bank has contacted you by using artificial intelligence, that you've charged something in a way that you've never charged before. Either it's been at a store, and so I look really to the bank to protect people from that. But one point on debit cards, I would just advise everybody to never use a debit card on an online transaction, because a debit card goes right out of your bank account. If you use a credit card, then it goes into your banks. And so you've got a buffer there. And so it's not money that you're out and you have to recover. It's money that the credit card company is out. So that would just be a simple advice, that, to avoid the debit card at all costs. You're on mute, Joe.
I'm sorry, I thought I clicked off. So here's another question as a follow-up to a lot of job opportunities in the cybersecurity area. And remember, you got a lot of fathers and grandfathers on this call. What type of education do you need and experience to become a cybersecurity expert? Are there certain universities that have better, whether it be a forensic accounting or forensic IT type programs to help educate the future generation of cybersecurity analysts? What would you say if we asked you, hey, how do we direct, for example, my son-in-law to become to consider cybersecurity education so that he can advance in that field?
Yeah, computer science is always a great entree to it. different types of engineering. But also it's just a natural curiosity that people have. They like to solve puzzles. They like to solve problems. One of my good friends has a son, he was in the military and was in a very strong cybersecurity. So the kid grew up with it. In 8th grade, he said, I want to be in cybersecurity. He's now going into college. And George Washington, he lives in DC. George Washington University has a really good program. What's one in Pittsburgh? Mellon.
Carnegie Mellon.
Carnegie Mellon has a really strong program. Cal, but there are lots of software engineering schools to do that, and also just if you can get internships and things like that. There's a lot of people in cybersecurity that like to share information and mentor kids, and because they're trying to get this problem solved too. And I mean, one of the things is that not one company, not one government. It takes a lot of collaboration. And last week there was I don't know if people read about the An phone. It was a phone on the black market that several law enforcement people had been working for 18 months to get cyber criminals to use this secret phone. And it ended up, law enforcement had access to it. And so my guess is that, they were getting close to being discovered, and that's why they had to make it public. And, they were able to arrest 800 people, but, still the best way to crack any kind of, cybersecurity is just through information and security.
Hey, Paul, this has been a real education. I'm going to ask you one more question. We have to wrap up, but is there a chance that you could spend a little more time at the end of this meeting? We'll put you in a breakout room. There are some questions we weren't able to get to. I don't know how you're set for time.
Like for the next half hour or so?
Yeah, the next half hour at the most.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to do that.
I'll owe you coffee on Saturday. Hey, one last question before I turn you back to John Kent. There is a question around how overall infrastructure companies that have technology, have networks, etc. How would you gauge or evaluate how serious they take the threat of hack of their computer networks? Is it a realization problem where a lot of big companies, because they haven't been hacked and it hasn't cost them a lot of money in a ransomware attack, they really don't, it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. There are other pressing problems, so it doesn't get the priority. If you had to gauge where America's industry is as far as their understanding of the threat of cybersecurity breaks, what would you tell us?
Yeah, I would just say who's the senior security person? Who does that person report to, and what's his budget? That would answer a lot. And I mean, we didn't really talk about healthcare, but hundreds of and probably thousands of hospitals in this country, mostly in rural areas, smaller, that don't have sophisticated security teams, have suffered from ransomware. And those are life-threatening attacks, and where patient records and monitoring facilities have been impacted. And so, the hospital that I go to, I would want to make sure that they're taking security very seriously.
John, I'm going to turn it back to you. Paul, just on a personal level, thank you very much. I'll see you this weekend, but let me turn it back over to John. This was quite an education.
Good. Thanks, Joe. And Paul, great talk. Thank you very much. And the difference between Joe and I is he's going to buy you a cup of coffee. I'd buy you a beer.
I'll take you up.
We've got a nice little certificate shown on the screen here for you. It's suitable to hang on your wall right next to your big screen TV so you can look at it every day. And we certainly appreciate your insight, Paul. And I, for one, count on you and people in your career field to keep us safe, from cyber safe. And thank you so much for everything that you do in your career. It's much, much appreciated. Okay, thanks, Paul. And thanks for hanging on with us. If you can hang on with us for about 15 minutes, that'd be great.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're going to go to our golden pipes, Mike Thalen, and singing America the Beautiful. Go, Mike.
I think I will. Yeah, thanks. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet whose stern impassioned stress. Oh, thoroughfare for freedom beat across the wilderness. America, America, mend thine every flaw. Confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay, now we've got the 3 winners of the $25 check, and they are Rob Callahan, Mike Maher, and Jim Burke. So congratulations, guys, and as they say, the check's in the mail. And again, Michael, thank you very much for subbing in for John Knoll and singing the America the Beautiful. Well done, buddy. Thank you. Okay, that's it. And the next Zoom meeting will be on Wednesday, July 21st. Same time, same channel. And we're going to remain open for about another 20 minutes, and Paul will stay with us. So if you want to react with him and others, please stay on. So see you guys, and see you next month. See you next month.
Thank you, John.
Okay. All right, it's open. Go.
Okay, Paul, this group is quiet, so I'll throw out one of my questions I learned during my my preparation. Our cars now rely heavily on technology. All I got to do is drive a Tesla for a little while. How much are we at risk that some of the safety devices and ultimately they'll be able to have self-driving cars? How much are we at risk that some hacker is going to damage the control mechanism or the control software of our cars?
We are at risk. And I've looked at business plans of a couple automobile security companies on the outside to look and protect that. Again, it's Tesla and the OnStar and those manufacturers are going to have to build the security into the cars, but it's just like any other network. It's vulnerable, and there have I don't have the examples, but I know I've read them in articles that they have they've been breached, and cards have been turned off, locked. They've been locked, unlocked. Those types of things happen. It's just one more thing. When you had mentioned, or Joe had mentioned the your big screen television, that support that comes in, there's a camera in your television, and anything that comes into your house, your temperature, your thermometer, if you have a Nest or something. I don't know if you're familiar with the term IoT, Internet of Things, baby monitors, cheap security, they all come in, they're all potential threats. I've seen big companies hacked because of an old printer sitting in a network that they forgot even was there, and they've come in. And so and then with Siri, you're constantly being the surveillance and monitoring. I hate those things. I don't know how many people use those. And so all of those are, different ways that could invoke an attack.
Paul, if
I'm
you're
sure a
sitting,
lot, go ahead.
Paul, if you're sitting there at your computer during the day, and then all of a sudden you get this big red box that flashes up and it says, you're under attack and you have to do such and such and such. What is the best thing to do? In other words, just shut your computer down?
Unplug the network, unplug it from the network, shut it down. Yeah. And take, I'm assuming you're using a wireless network there. Any other computer that you have that was on that network, I would take it off the network also.
I have Comcast, so they come in through a cable.
Yeah. Yep.
Paul, what's your take on this recent revelation from Amazon that with their Ring devices and home devices, that they're now sort of stealing a little bit of your bandwidth and communicating with other such devices, in your neighborhood and so on and so forth?
I look at, our phone does that all the time with apps. Yeah. And so I kind of look at it in the same manner. And so, when I talk to my students, I mean, they don't have the paranoia that you and I have with privacy and security. I mean, they have grown up with it and just look like it's part of the deal. And, you've all, got an email, made a phone call, and then all of a sudden, whatever you were asking about, a trip to Hawaii, a trip to New Zealand, all of a sudden you're getting ads for those kinds of things. I mean, it's just phenomenal as to how much, we are the product of all these high-tech companies, the Googles, the Amazons, the Facebooks, and, we've let this happen to ourselves without any knowledge of it. I know that Facebook didn't intend to have the impact that they've had, particularly in the elections and what's going on, but they've been manipulated, and it's scary. I have a current company called Countable that it's a nonpartisan. It started out as a nonpartisan political platform to try to open up communication, and I had invested in the company because the founder was a kid that worked for me before, and was really bright, and I had confidence in him. And after the 2016 election, I said, look, I just sold a company. I said, how can I help you here? Now we're trying to create this platform, Countable, that brands can use as their own social network in which they can monitor. An example is that we manage all of the Tesla car clubs around the world. There's like 200 of them. And it used to be that Tesla would use Facebook and things that they didn't have control over. And now each of these clubs can run locally, but they have control and they can help with that. So sorry, I could just ramble for too long, but I just called up some of the questions, and I saw the one about the cell phones. When you get something that says spam risk, don't answer the phone. It's just a commercial. How many people still have landlines in their house? If you raise your hand if you do have a landline, and do you get anything except spam on the landline? You know, I pulled our phone out. It actually had been out for 2 weeks and we didn't even know it. And then all of a sudden we realized that, hey, we haven't been getting these bothersome phone calls. And so it was the spam risk that was there. But, you know, it's basically phone companies looking at traffic patterns and identifying that, you know, this is highly, you know, it's a spam call or an advertising call. And you know, it's the same with emails and phone calls. If you don't know who's calling you, you know, it's best not even to answer it. Let it go to voicemail, let it go, you know, and when you get an email, if there's something to click on, you know, definitely don't click on, you know, don't even open an email you don't recognize where it's from.
Paul, are you a proponent for, you know, annually bringing your personal computer in just to have an expert double check to see if there are any viruses, malware, whatever, somehow embedded in your programs?
You know, if you have the tools, you could usually run on it. I mean, you know, I still have an IT department that I could have look at it. So I don't there, but my wife, you know, I look at her computer and, you know, regularly. It's, I mean, you kind of get a feel that you can see that the responsiveness slow, you know, it slows down when there's malware on there. And so, you know, taking it to a Best Buy for a tune-up, or, you know, there's a lot of local tech guys that will come to your house, you know, try to get a reference on them, or that you've worked, you know, who they worked with and things like that for reputation. But you know,
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. Who has a question?
Norton has an ad out now where if you have Norton software, they give you a phone number to call, and it says call this phone number, and we'll come into your computer and we'll look for malware and stuff like that. And it seems like it's a remote service. Is that a legitimate Norton offer?
well, not looking at, I would assume Norton has that offer. And there are several others that do too, that they'll be able to dial into your computer. Again, try to do a couple references so that you have that, because you are opening up your computer to them. You know, I've had several tech people that have done that before. You know, that is a legitimate business. I'm not saying that one is specifically, because it could be somebody, you know, trying to take advantage of Norton's brand, and, you know, there's a misspelling or something like that on there too. But I mean, but that's the paranoia that's good to have.
My suggestion is never give out access to your computer to anybody that's like, if you haven't initiated the call.
Right. No, that's a safe way of doing that. I think in mid 2000, probably 2005, I was in Miami speaking at a security conference, and I was contacted by my bank that somebody had opened a credit card in my name. I did a little research and found that they'd rented an apartment, got utilities in Miami, and you know, it was through one of the major breaches that they got my data. And it was just a mild inconvenience, but I ended up, because I was in the area, I went to the apartment. When I got there, first thing I noticed was the office had an armed guard. And then when I went to the apartment that was supposedly mine, there were 3 police cars there. And so I asked one of the cops, I said, you know, I'm in cybersecurity, somebody rented this apartment in my name. And the guy looked at me like I was crazy and said, what the hell is wrong with you? Get the hell out of here. These are dangerous people. And so I stopped by the office and they said the FBI was here later. So it was part of a major operation. It was interesting, and also it was like, I don't know what I was doing other than just being a stupid way to spend the afternoon. I was fortunate it was a cop and it wasn't somebody else with a gun.
Does law enforcement view some of these hacks as kind of like, oh, it's a victimless crime. You've got insurance. We've got real criminals to deal.
It depends on what the crime is, what their backlog is. Is this something that happens multiple times? I mean, it's really hard to get somebody to, if you're in San Francisco or Oakland, to come in where you have somebody broke into my car. And so the fact that somebody is impersonating you, it is really tough to get law enforcement's attention.
Do you have much dealings with the Israelis? They seem to be at the forefront of cybersecurity and things like that.
That's a great question, Michael. I love the Israel. I worked for a company for a year. The founder was a company called Cetera Networks. And one of the VCs says, hey, would you help them build out North America? And they are brilliant. And so, and the thing is that they all have their mandatory military service at the end of high school. And so they're identifying the most brilliant math brains around by the time they're in middle school and in high school. And then they get recruited to these elite companies within the military. And then from there, they've gone on to start several, multi-billion-dollar security companies. And I'm really impressed with the work ethic of the Israelis. I mean, I was probably 2014, bombs are bursting in the air. There's, and they're still working. I had to go to Johnson & Johnson, their chief security officer at one point, and said, hey, how can we be sure that, working with an Israeli company that, they're going to be here? And I said, well, first of all, we're in the cloud. And so, we'll be able to work, relocate to Europe or US if we needed to. And the other is that these guys come to work every day and they work under unbelievable stress. And they don't, when they finish their military and then they get their college degree, they don't want to go to work for a Facebook or an IBM, or a large company. They want to be innovators and they want to start their own company. There's a great book called Startup Nation about the Israeli startup community that I really like a lot.
Go ahead, Charles.
Thank you. I'm just visiting here on your website for the first time. Just moved down from the Seattle area. I was going to say about a bank calling to say that they are opening a credit card. I got a call from Mitsubishi Bank a few years ago to say they were opening a very high limit credit card, and which was all bogus. And I found out I was one of 30 some people living in an apartment in Orange, California. We finally shut that down. But also, I've got a couple of questions. How can I contact you with offline questions? Do you have an email that you're willing to reveal?
Paul, Paul, @countable, just like it says there.com.
At countable.com. Okay. Just Paul at countable.com. Thank you.
Sure. One of the other, what I was reminded by your question is that you should contact your bank and say that you've been a victim of identity theft, and they'll freeze your credit, which just makes it 2 or 3 more steps you have to go through. And, I always do that, because, you know, at this point, I don't want people to have easy credit. And, you know, the credit card companies, they all try to balance how much do they want to check versus how many new accounts do they have. But if you tell your bank that, you know, you believe you've been a victim and, you know, you'd like to put a freeze on that, they'll do that. And it, you know, again, it just is a way that they'll have to contact you before somebody could open a credit card, including yourself. So, you know, I think
Yeah, I have to say, I'll follow up on that question. A few weeks later, I was recontacted by that person from security at that bank just to verify that it was a bogus request to open their account. I had to verify that because she had gotten into trouble because the application had been cleared by the people who were supposed to clear those sort of things. And she had sort of stepped out of line to do it herself. And she is being called on the carpet for not following procedures, quote unquote.
A few months back, I had two illegitimate accounts opened, credit card accounts. I think it was Capital One or something, but I was notified right away the new account was open in my name, so I checked it out. I canceled both of them. It was no problem. Nothing ever got charged, but it took me several months to get both of the hard checks on my credit score taken off, because those things usually stay there for a couple of years, but they did finally clear off.
Yeah, it's time consuming. And there are a couple of services, LifeLock, I don't know if anybody ever uses them, where they'll do some research and monitoring for you. Sometimes that's, you know, just having that service is worth it. Well, I had mentioned before, one of the founders of Dacia, Neil Daswani, who I trust, you know, completely. He was the chief security officer at LifeLock, and then when LifeLock was acquired by Symantec, he was the chief security officer at Symantec. And so I have confidence in that product just because of his involvement. But yeah, again, I'm not you know, recommending it or anything, but it's, you know, if you look at the different services that are there, and sometimes your insurance companies now are offering that. Allstate acquired a similar service like LifeLock to sell to its customers too, because I mean, cybersecurity insurance is big for corporations now also. And so that's something, you know, that's a new you know, vertical that's established within the insurance industry. And so, you know, it's another way for companies to, you know, manage the risk of that. And I think a lot of the chief risk officers are looking at that.
Hey, do we have one last question for Paul? I'm cognizant of time and we've almost hit that 12:30 witching hour. One last question. Anybody have one for Paul?
They had these hacks of solar wind and a few other, and there's one that was just discovered at Microsoft, another one. I mean, those are major hacks. And then the Chinese government sitting in our government databases for months without being detected. How could that happen?
It happens all the time. It's years. You know, networks are complex. The SolarWinds is really interesting. I mean, it was a Texas software company that was infiltrated by a company that they actually sent in all of these, you know, companies like Intel, Microsoft were customers of SolarWinds, and they got, you know, notification to update their, you know, patch their software. And the patch itself was malware, malicious software that the Chinese had put in there. And, you know, thousands of big, stable companies were infiltrated. And, it, you know, for, you know, again, I'm not sure, you know, how they caught it or where they did. I think actually FireEye saw the common area where it was a security company, and they were able to identify it. I mean, if anybody says they can't, they can't get hacked, it's impossible to protect yourself completely, because you have to protect every possible way to get in. And the bad guys only need to find one way to get in. And, oftentimes it's by one sloppy user, but in this case, it was a really sophisticated and aggressive breach. And, it's eye-opening. And then when you start looking at, the power of computers, as you get to quantum computing and things like that, people used to say, well, 16-letter password would, take hours to try, or days to try to crack that password. With quantum computing, it could be done in 20 minutes or something, just because, the processing power that they have. So it's going to get, more sophisticated and more, and, unfortunately, a lot of the systems that have been written, security's got to be built into the software going forward. And that causes software, longer development times, which always are difficult. But it's the holes in the software that we use that create a lot of the vulnerabilities. So hope, and they say artificial intelligence is going to help the security companies, and it will, but it's also going to help the attackers. And so, both of the technologies are working on both sides of the fence.
I have one question. Is there going to be a videotape of this? I had to come on late. Is there a way to access this after the meeting?
The short answer is yes. Dan Poulin usually places it out on the SIRS website. I don't know exactly the timing, but it should be soon.
Yeah, I do that, Joe, and it'll be.
Oh, I'm sorry, Joe.
It'll be up there. It usually takes me a day or so to get the processing done, but by sometime Friday, you can check the lunch page on the website, and there'll be a link to a video of this whole meeting.
And with your last comment about passwords, does that suggest we shouldn't waste our time doing 20-character passwords?
Well,
if you dealt with that, I'll see it on the video. But
yeah, you need to have a password. So, what I had talked about was kind of some password protector keys, like 1Password and some of the others to manage your passwords for you.
That's a good idea, you're saying. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw it. I put it in the chat notes earlier, actually a PDF presentation that we did in our STEM group on password security, password safes, and also talks about a little bit about the length of passwords and all that kind of stuff. So you can find that. You go back in the chat, you can download it from there, or if you go to our website and look under the STEM group, there's a past presentations are all listed there, and you can download a PDF of that as well.
What's it called? Is it called Passwords?
Well, on the website, yeah, if you go to the STEM group, STEM group, it's a password security, I think was the name of the presentation. It was from, we did it in August, I think, of last year.
Yep, Joe, I already saved it. That'll be my after phone call reading today.
All right, there you go. It's also in the chat. If you go to your chats on this session here, you scroll back up somewhere in there, I uploaded it, so everybody should be able to download it from there.
Yeah,
Great.
3 of the tools: 1Password, Dashlane, and LastPass. And now Google's trying to build it right into their Chrome browser too, that it'll ask you if you want to save the password, and it'll automatically fill it in for you on first.
Yeah, one of the key things with those is some are cloud-based and some are standalone on your device. So that's I think an important consideration when you're again thinking about how secure you want to be. So something to think about.
Which is better?
It's I don't think there's one right answer. I mean, I think from a security standpoint, the less you share outside of your network, the better off you are. So I personally use one that just resides on my computer. But the cloud-based ones have some convenient options that, so from a convenience standpoint, I have no idea what their underlying security is, so I couldn't speak to that, but I imagine it's fairly good.
Yeah, I have a lot of confidence in I mean, nobody's got perfect security, but I don't think anybody has better, even, the biggest banks could have better security than what Amazon, Microsoft, Google put there, but that doesn't mean they're still not vulnerable.
Right.
But, they just, their reputation is based on security, the whole concept of cloud computing. And, my experience is that, when companies said they had challenges going to the cloud, they said, well, look at your security personnel. And do you think that you have the same level of expertise that Amazon can hire and that Microsoft can hire and retain? Because, when you have somebody and they're very good, they get gobbled up for a lot of money by some, really large companies. So, the talent is, there's not enough. And so it's not just, do you have the talent now, but then can you retain it on an ongoing basis?
Thank you.
All right. Well, again, Paul, this has been very informative, and your goal of it being very interactive has been met and probably exceeded. I'm glad that the group had a lot of questions, got the information they needed. A few people now have your email accountable. They'll be back in touch with you. But on behalf of the sirs, I appreciate very much you spending an hour and a half, especially being a grandfather recently for the second time. Your time is precious. So I do appreciate you spending the hour and a half with us. This was fantastic.
Thanks, Joe. You do a lot of good for a lot of people. So anytime I can help you, I'm happy to do
Hey,
it.
I'll see you Friday and Saturday. Bubba's buying for his birthday on Friday, and John Moran, your old rugby friend from St. Mary's, is buying on Saturday. I know better than to tell these guys where, otherwise we'll have 22 sirs there also. Paul, thanks again. Hey, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks
Take
everyone.
care. Bye-bye.